I've been stuck driving in an endless highway tunnel for 10 hours. Somehow I found a spot in the tunnel with enough service to, hopefully, get this post out. I'm holding on to this singular bar for dear life. My situation is growing dire. I'm running out of gas, which also means I won't be able to charge my phone. The only food I have is a bag of Sour Patch Kids, a box of Cheez-Its, 2 Red Bulls, and about a half gallon of water. Let me explain what's going on. I'm a traveler, always have been. I'm used to cross-country road trips. I'm located in the United States, driving for hours through the night without stopping except to use the restroom or grab a quick meal. I'm currently making the trek from Los Angeles to Chicago. I've done this trip before, but I took Route 66 that time for the hell of it. This time I opted to take the interstates, a shorter ride in a way I haven't taken before. This way cuts through the middle of the country, passing through Colorado and Nebraska and Iowa. The drive was going normal. Lots of nothingness. I'm used to going hours without seeing any other cars or people when I'm driving out here. By the time I'm writing this, I've been driving for close to 3 days. Last night I slept in a Walmart parking lot somewhere in Colorado. I think Frisco? I drove for over 14 hours straight yesterday, only stopping a couple of times at gas stations to grab snacks, take a piss and refuel. I grabbed dinner at a Taco Bell at like midnight before I crashed. I'm recounting every detail because I'm hoping that maybe this whole thing could be explained away by a lack of sleep and nutrition. I know I should be eating and sleeping more, but I just don't think about it when I'm on the road. I don't think about anything. That's why I love these trips so much. Anyways, I woke up this morning at the crack of dawn, like 6 a.m. in Colorado, which is 5 a.m. my time, and continued on my way. I wanted to make good time, not for any reason. It's not like I had plans. I just wanted to see how quickly I could drive so far. I grabbed breakfast at a local cafe, a bagel and a coffee, filled up on gas. Grabbed some Red Bulls, some beef jerky, and a gallon of water. Then I headed out. I don't think I stopped driving until like 6 hours in, when I realized I was going to piss myself from all the energy. Drinks I chugged, I tend to space out until it's nearly too late. I stopped at the first gas station. I saw 2 measly gas pumps and a rundown old wooden shack for a convenience store. I was somewhere coming up on Kearney. Nebraska and I had endured another time change, so it was now around 2 p.m. I walked inside and the bell on the door jingled. The man at the cash register jumped, startled by the first sign of life other than his own cigarette-soaked breaths. I asked him if they had a restroom and he grinned. "There's a bucket out back." "Princess," he said, stifling a chuckle. I stared at him blankly, waiting for a punchline. He sighed and handed me a tarnished key attached to a piece of wood which had been roughly etched with pisser. He pointed to a door at the far end of the shack. I did my business, though the toilet looked like it hadn't been cleaned since before I was born, and returned the key to the man at the register, who I now noticed had a name tag that read Gus. I turned to leave, but before I could, Gus cleared his throat and asked me, "Where you headed?" I told him Chicago, and he said, "What for?" I told him I didn't really know. Just to go, I guess. His eyes lingered on me a moment, almost an uncomfortable amount of time, then he quickly glanced about the shack before he said, "Well, if you can spare a couple hours, I know of a bitchin' scenic route through the peaks a bit further north." He went on to tell me that this route was only really known to locals, winding through Nebraskan peaks with plenty of lookouts over whatever the hell is in Nebraska. Historically home to booze-filled high school parties, romantic illegal camping rendezvous, and of course, its fair share of local folklore legends like the classic teen lovers murdered during a makeout sesh and the killer was never caught type shit. It's not like his story really piqued my interest. It's the same shit you hear about every random scenic route and lookout in every random small town. But that's exactly why I chose to embark upon Goose Route. I'm always so curious to explore the places that locals know, and a door in all of the random small towns I wind up in along my travels. It makes me realize how connected we really are, no matter where we are in the world. We live out these parallel lives, experiencing emotions and struggles that so many other people also experience. In their own ways, I love finding these spots. I love feeling connected with something, anything. He gave me crude directions, but it seemed simple enough. Continue up Interstate 80 for an hour or two longer until I see a turnoff. A dirt road to my left, can't miss it. That'll take me where I need to go. According to Gus, I figured that if I didn't see the turnoff, I'd just take the loss. After our conversation, I decided to purchase some snacks, Sour Patch Kids, Cheez-Its, and 2 more Red Bulls and a pack of menthol cigarettes. I filled up on gas again before leaving. I wasn't sure when the next gas station would be, especially if I found Gus' route and I continued on my way. I lit a cigarette as I began this next leg of my journey. My mother would kill me for smoking in my car. She'd kill me for a lot of the shit I do when I take these trips. One thing I started to learn is that Nebraska is full of corn and wheat. In all directions, all I could see were miles and miles of farmland. Stalks waving in the wind like a sorry excuse for an ocean. Interstate 80 was surrounded, crops creeping onto the shoulders of the road, refusing to adhere to man-made perimeters. The stalks grew high above my SUV, making it so I could see nothing beyond the confines of my wheatie. Corny prison. I had been driving for about 2 hours since the gas station. When I saw it, a break in the crops to my left. Gus was right, I couldn't miss it. The dirt road stood out like a beacon, a sudden relief from my engulfment. I didn't feel any hesitation to take the path. In fact, I was excited that I had actually stumbled across it. As I made the turn, I could almost feel the stories, the experiences of the people who had made this turn before me. Every local has their spots. In every big city, every small town, every single person has a place that is special to them. A coffee shop, a hiking trail, a park, somewhere they have left pieces of themselves. I want to leave pieces of myself everywhere. The dirt road cut through the fields, heading north. Far ahead of me, I could see a small range of peaks and hills, nothing compared to California's mountain ranges. But at least it wasn't flat, like everywhere else is out here. After driving through more and more miles of farmland, eventually I started to ascend. The road curved to my right at the base of the closest peak, turned from dirt into old battered pavement, and I began a twisty-turny ride up and up. As I got higher up the peak, I could see what Gus was talking about. The views were incredible. Plots of farmland, a quilt that covered the earth in greens and tans and yellows. I lit another cigarette and slowly continued my drive. I stopped at a couple of lookouts. Just random turnoffs on the side of the road, taking in my surroundings. You can find beauty in anything if you try, even Nebraskan wheat fields. I felt like a local. The road was nothing special, similar to most mountain roads I've taken before. Nothing stood out, really, besides some empty bottles and beer cans in the brush. I didn't see a single other person for the entirety of my drive, which I enjoyed. It was just me in the woods and the road. Then I entered the tunnel. I didn't think anything of it. Plenty of mountain roads cut through portions of the mountain itself, causing you to drive through a manufactured hole in the rock. I used to play a game as a kid, where I'd hold my breath until we made it through to the other side. I'm glad I didn't try to hold my breath this time. I immediately noticed the tunnel was long. I couldn't see any light coming from the other end. The dirty orange bulbs hanging from the ceiling every 10 feet or so didn't make much of a difference in the pitch black. I drove for about 30 minutes, thinking to myself that this may be the longest tunnel I've ever driven through. Then the lights started diminishing. They began popping up every 30 feet, then every 50 feet, then every 100 feet, then there were none. I drove through the darkness for another 45 minutes, my headlights leading the way. I'd been in the tunnel for over an hour now. It was close to 8 p.m. and I didn't see any signs of the exit. I decided to turn around. I didn't like being swallowed by darkness. The rock walls were closing in on me, reigniting my claustrophobic fears that consumed me as a child. I drove for an hour or so back the direction I came. The lights should have started coming back by now, but they didn't. No orange bulbs. I drove for another hour, and another. Almost 3 hours driving back the way I came, and I never made it back to the tunnel's entrance. I was never greeted by the warm glow of the dim bulbs. Maybe the lights had gone out, but even then, I should have been out of the tunnel hours ago by now. I started getting worried. I was confused. I had turned around, hadn't I? I remembered taking that 3-point U-turn in the narrow tunnel I had. Been worried my SUV wouldn't even be able to make the turn, and was relieved when it had. I grabbed my phone, but of course, no service. And who would I even call? My angry mother, who would just chew me out for listening to a strange man at a gas station in the first place? I have no friends back home. I'm more inclined to spend my time alone. No relationships, besides an ex who wants me dead. I've only had myself for as long as I can remember. I left on this trip without telling anyone I was leaving, let alone where it'd be. Would anyone even notice I was lost? My mind was racing, looking for a solution as I kept driving. Luckily, my car's good on gas. I was still at half a tank. I just kept going. What else was I supposed to do? After another 2 hours, I was desperate. My gas wouldn't last forever. It was dwindling fast. And when my car gave out, I wouldn't be able to charge my phone either. My only distraction from the void enveloping me was my downloaded Spotify playlists. I needed that to survive. I needed that so I didn't go crazy in here. Out of nowhere, while I was fiddling with my music, I saw a beacon of hope. One single bar, it popped up for a split second. I slammed on my brakes and reversed until I got to the sweet spot. At this point, I didn't care if my mother screamed at me so loud it damaged my phone speaker. I needed to tell someone what was happening to me. I hovered over her contact for a few seconds before I sighed and clicked call. It didn't even ring, just a horrific beeping that signified no service. I rested my forehead on the steering wheel, tears starting to well. I wasn't going to get stuck out here, I couldn't. My brain wouldn't even consider that an option. I grabbed my phone and got out of the car. An eerie whistling from the wind blowing through the tunnel filled my ears. I climbed on top of my car. Maybe if I stood up here, I could get a call out. It didn't work. The same disheartening beeping rang out over and over, and I groaned. I could feel the anxiety building, my heart pounding against my chest. Then I heard something. It was faint at first, like someone trying to stifle a cough. I thought I imagined it. I stood there listening. Then it happened again, louder. It sounded like a playful shout, like maybe a teenager exploring the tunnel, hooting and hollering with their friends. This is what my mind latched on to another. Sign of life meant I could get out of here. I shouted back, "Hey!" It echoed, bouncing off the cold rock walls, repeating over and over. Then it was uncannily quiet. The wind's whistling stopped and everything went still. All I could hear were my own panicked breaths. Then footsteps. Hundreds of them, running, thumping footsteps coming from both directions. It shook the ground and made my car wobble. Pebbles tumbled off the walls. I've never felt so weak, so exposed. I damn near broke a bone jumping off of the roof of my car and stumbling into my driver's seat at what felt like the speed of light. I slammed the car door and locked it. I laid my seat all the way back and pressed myself against it, wanting so badly to dissolve, to disappear. My car stopped swaying. Quiet returned. I laid there for what must have been an hour, maybe more. Tears caked my face and I couldn't stop shaking. I tried every breathing exercise my therapist had taught me. Nothing could calm me. What the actual fuck was that? I haven't moved. I'm still laying in my driver's seat typing this. It's almost 4 a.m. I have been in this tunnel for almost 10 hours. I thought that maybe if I sat down and wrote out everything that's happened so far, it would help me understand. I still don't understand. But it is helping me to settle down. It's grounding me in my reality. Can someone please figure out where I am? Can someone tell me what's happening? How does a tunnel suddenly extend by miles? Did Gus know about this? Is that why he sent me here? I'm paranoid. What do I do from here? I don't want to get out of my car again. What if they find me? Why did they stop running to me? Did I imagine it in my hungry, exhausted state? I don't think continuing to drive is a good option. But it's really the only option. Eventually my gas is going to run out. Eventually my phone is going to die for good. Eventually, I will starve or die of dehydration. I'm conserving the little food and drink I have as much as I can. I'm freaking out. I'm so thankful I bought these cigarettes. If anyone has any idea how I can get out of this, please tell me. I'll try anything. If anything else happens in here, I'll keep you updated. I pray to God this post. I grew up on an island with one rule: never talk about the other island. I was born on an island that only really had one rule. The kind that wasn't spoken but lived in people's posture. The way their mouths tightened, the way their eyes avoided a certain part of the sea. We were never to talk about the island across the water. It sat to the east, a half-mile off our shoreline. You couldn't miss it. You'd see it from almost anywhere on our side past the docks, over the tree line. From the cliffs on the northern edge where the goats grazed. It was always there, sitting still, never changing. A piece of land so close you could row to it in under an hour, though no one did. I can't remember a single adult ever naming it, not even once. And if you said something about it, even by accident, someone would shut it down immediately, not angrily, just firmly, like flicking a candle out. One time when I was little, maybe 7 or 8, I pointed across the water and asked my mother if anyone lived there. She didn't scold me. She didn't say anything at all. She just took my hand and led me inside, like it asked where babies come from or what happens when you die. That kind of silence. Another time, I asked my grandfather if he'd ever been. He was cleaning fish out by the shed. He paused just a second too long before saying no, then added, "Never ask about it again," and that was that. It wasn't forbidden in the way dangerous things are forbidden. It was deeper. Like the island didn't want to be spoken of. And the people here had agreed to let it be. Our island wasn't big. You could walk across it in a few hours if you didn't stop. There was the village near the western bay, with its stone paths and wood-slatted houses and the small church, where we held market on Sundays. A few scattered farms, a fishing dock, and the old watchtower from before my time that no one used anymore. It was quiet, steady. The kind of place where every door creaked the same way. And you knew who'd passed by just from the sound of their cough. The trade boat came once a week, usually just before noon. We never saw where it came from. It always arrived from the mist. It brought flour, salt, oil, iron tools, letters sometimes, though no one in my family ever got any. It left with barrels of fish and boxes of preserved vegetables. No one ever left with it. Only the trader ever boarded it. He'd pass down the rope to whoever helped him load and unload. But no one else ever crossed the rail. We were a closed loop. We grew up knowing our boundaries, the sea, the woods, the cliffs, and beyond all of that, the other island, always watching, always ignored. There were 5 of us who couldn't leave it alone: me, Jonah, Sam, Eli, and Nathan. We were kids like any others, too much energy, not enough fear. We ran barefoot through the brush, built slingshots from driftwood, dared each other to knock on the widow's door. We spent hot days pretending to be soldiers, and cold nights pretending we weren't scared of ghosts. We stole things, but nothing important: apples, candles. Once a bottle of wine we didn't even like. We were just loud, restless boys. Jonah was the biggest, tall for his age, shoulders already starting to widen like his father's. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. Sam was the quickest, always first to climb something, first to run, first to joke about things that made the rest of us squirm. Eli was quiet and careful, and always the one who asked what if. Before we did something dumb. Nathan was clever, sometimes too clever to make up lies so good we believed them even after he admitted they weren't true. And then there was me. I don't know what I was in that group. I guess I was the one who remembered, the one who carried it longest. We never said it out loud, but we all watched the island. From the rocks by the southern cliff, from the upper fields when the wind cleared the trees. From the shore when we were supposed to be fishing, but spent more time staring at the horizon. We'd talk about it only when we were sure no one else was listening. Maybe it's a ruin, Eli once said, like people used to live there, but something happened. Sam snorted. What, like ghosts? Maybe it's where the traitor comes from, I offered. He never says. Jonah said nothing, just stared into the distance. We didn't speak of it often. And when we did, it was always with that half-serious tone kids use, when they're testing how far they can push something without making it real. But over time, the idea started to settle, not in our mouths but in our bones, like it had been waiting there all along. We didn't plan it then, but I think we all knew we would. It was Jonah who said it first. We were behind the storehouse, the five of us perched on a broken cart that sank slightly in the middle, chewing through whatever scraps we'd stolen from our kitchen's salted fish. Hard bread, half-rotted apples that still had enough sweetness left in them to be worth the trouble. The kind of food that tasted better because it wasn't given to us. He didn't clear his throat or build up to it. He just said, "I think we should go," like he was talking to himself. No one asked where. We all knew, that silence, the way no one looked at each other. The way we kept chewing like the words hadn't landed, that was agreement. Sam spat a seed into the dirt. Tomorrow, Jonas still didn't look up. 2 mornings before sunup, Nathan nodded. Eli wiped his hands on his pants. I didn't say anything, but I was already picturing the tide. We met 2 mornings later, just before sunrise, in the kind of pale, still light that feels like the world hasn't started yet. The moon was still visible, hanging low in the sky like it hadn't made up its mind to leave. The dirt was damp from night air, and everything around us smelled like the ocean. Not fresh like wind and salt stale, like old ropes and barnacles and the inside of a bait barrel. We didn't bring much, a couple flasks of water, a loaf of bread wrapped in a cloth, some rope, a pocket knife none of us could use, right? Eli brought his father's compass. The face was cracked, and the needle had a habit of drifting even when you held it steady, but he brought it anyway. Sam brought a hammer for some reason, though he never said why. Jonah had taken the skiff from the far end of the dock, where the unused boats were kept. It wasn't in good shape, but it floated. That was enough. It creaked when we pushed it into the shallows, and for a second I thought the sound might carry and wake someone. But the village above us stayed dark. No lights, no footsteps. Just the soft hiss of water and the thump of oars against the side of the hull. We climbed in. Jonah and Nathan took the oars first, setting a rhythm without speaking. The rest of us sat in silence, our backs to the shore. I didn't look back. The water was colder than I expected, not freezing, but deep cold like it came from underneath something. There wasn't much wind, just a faint breeze that moved in slow, irregular pulses. It brushed the surface of the sea in places. I watched the light from the sky ripple and disappear beneath the oars as we moved. As we got farther out, the shape of the island came into view slowly, like it was pushing through fog we hadn't noticed before. I'd seen it all my life, but only from shore. Now, from the water, it felt different, bigger, heavier. The trees formed a jagged silhouette against the sky, and the hills behind them looked like sleeping animals just starting to stir. The closer we got, the more it felt familiar. The shape of the coastline, the slope of the land. It was like rowing toward a memory one you couldn't fully place until you were inside it. There was a moment, maybe halfway across, where I turned to look behind us and saw that our own island was already fading into mist. A low fog was moving in fast, curling over the water like smoke through grass. The beach, the houses, even the trees gone. Just a soft grey smear behind us. It looked farther away than it should have. "Fins," Sam said, and he said it too calmly, like he was trying not to cause a stir. We all looked. Just to the right of the boat, something slid under the surface. Long, smooth. It passed without sound. Then another, and another. 4, just below the waterline, circling in wide, slow arcs. I couldn't see their shapes fully, but they moved like they had purpose. Sharks, Jonah said under his breath. Black tips, I think. Eli leaned forward. "How can you tell?" Jonah didn't answer. He just started rowing faster. So did Nathan. Neither of them said a word. But the skiff began to lurch forward harder with each pull. Sam reached down for the hammer in his bag and gripped it like it would make a difference. The boat started to wobble with the force of the strokes. Water splashed. The nose tilted. I tried to stay calm, but the air around me had gone thin, and every muscle in my body was bracing for something I couldn't see. The island was close now, close enough to see the rock line clearly. No dock, no paths. Just broken shoreline and thick brush that came almost down to the water. A crooked tree leaned out over the water near a narrow stretch of beach, barely wide enough to stand on. It looked untouched, uninviting. Then came the hit. A soft thud, followed by a jolt that rocked the skiff-like weight slammed into something just below the surface. "Reef!" Jonah barked. The boat tilted violently to one side, then the other. Water surged in through a crack below the center bench. Cold, fast, rising. Something heavy clattered against the boards, maybe the hammer. A second later, one of the bags split open and spilled across the bench bread. Rope, the knife all sliding toward the low side. "Out!" someone yelled. We didn't argue. We moved. The skiff was already sinking under us. One side dipping hard. I kicked off the bench and dove, not even sure if I was jumping or falling. Water swallowed me to the neck. The cold hit like a punch, and my breath locked up in my chest. Behind me splashing, gasping, limbs crashing into water. I could hear it all but didn't look back. The current fought harder than I expected. My arms were sluggish, my legs heavier than they should have been. I kicked toward shore, every breath shallow and burning. Something brushed past my foot too fast to register, too soft to be a log. I didn't stop. The distance couldn't have been more than 30 yards, but it felt like swimming through glass. The kind that keeps pulling you down instead of letting you break through. When my fingers finally hit rock, I hauled myself forward so fast I scraped both elbows raw. I didn't care. I just wanted to be out, one by one. The others crashed onto the beach behind me, crawling, dragging, coughing up seawater. The skiff was already gone, either swallowed by the reef or drifting. Half flooded, back into the mist. None of us had our bags. No compass, no food, no knife. The hammer was probably at the bottom of the sea by now. Everything we'd packed was gone. We stood there, shivering, dripping, catching our breath. One by one, we looked at each other, counting. 5 of us. No one missing, no one hurt, at least not badly. Then we looked around. It took a few seconds before anyone spoke. "This is the same place," Sam said, slower this time. "It's the same beach." It almost looked like it. Same crooked tree leaning out over the water like it was eavesdropping. Same cluster of black rocks jutting up along the curve of the cove. The same soft slope leading into the tree line beyond. Even the shape of the shoreline felt familiar, like we'd looped through time instead of space. Jonah turned in a full circle, scanning the trees and the shore and then the water again. "We didn't go anywhere," he said. His voice didn't sound angry. It sounded resigned. Eli was squinting at the ocean, his face tight. We rowed across, we saw the island, we left. He didn't say it like he was arguing. He said it like he was trying to remind himself. No one responded. We started walking slow at first, still trying to make sense of it. The beach looked nearly identical to our own, but it wasn't. The rocks were a little too sharp. The slope rose at a slightly different angle. The tree line was thinner, the color of the grass not quite right. Close enough to confuse us, different enough to keep us on edge. There was a narrow path leading off the beach and into the woods, just wide enough for two of us to walk side by side. None of us remembered it being there before. The air was different as we climbed, heavy and warm, like the weather had changed without warning. The trees swayed gently, but the grass up on the slope moved just a little too much. Jonah took the lead, Sam just behind him. Then Nathan, Eli, and me. We'd only made it about 30 or 40 paces up the trail when Nathan came to a stop. At first, I thought he was just catching his breath. But then I noticed where he was looking up the slope, toward the tall grass hugging the hillside. I followed his gaze and froze. She was so close. A very tall woman. She wasn't walking. Wasn't moving at all. Just standing in the grass like she'd been waiting for us to see her. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the wind kept going like she wasn't part of the world. The grass around her swayed. Her dress clung damply to her legs, but she didn't shift, didn't breathe. Her arms hung straight at her sides, too straight, too heavy, like she didn't know how they were supposed to work. She stood maybe 10 yards uphill, close enough to see the wrongness in how she carried herself. Her posture looked almost human, like a figure drawn from memory by someone who'd never actually seen one. That's when I realized what had hooked in my brain. Everything around her moved. But she didn't, not even a twitch. "Do you see her?" Ellis' voice was low, tight, like he wasn't sure if he was talking to us or himself. Of course we saw her. None of us had looked away. It felt like blinking might break. Some invisible barrier and make her come closer. Then she smiled. I didn't understand why it made my stomach twist at first. It wasn't exaggerated. It wasn't monstrous. It was subtle, just wrong. Her mouth stretched into what should have been a smile, but the shape was off. The corners bent down instead of up, like someone had tried to mimic it from memory and gotten the geometry wrong. But the rest of her face, the parts that move when you smile, those were perfect. The cheeks lifted, the skin around her eyes crinkled. That mismatch was worse than anything else. Her eyes were kind. Genuinely kind, not cold, not distant. She looked at us the way a mother looks at her children. There was warmth in her expression, and it made my skin crawl in a way I still can't explain. I can tell you this, if I'd known then what I know now about that woman, I would have turned and swum back out into the water. I would have taken my chances with the sharks. Gladly, she raised her arm. The motion was slow, unnatural-like. Her joints didn't belong to her. Her hand lifted until one long, stiff finger pointed straight at us. We didn't scream, we didn't run. We just started backing away. Careful not to turn around. Like we thought not facing her would make things worse. Sam bumped into Jonah, who muttered a curse under his breath. "Why is she pointing at us?" Sam asked, barely audible. Nobody answered. I kept watching her finger. Something felt off. The angle. It wasn't quite right. Eli squinted, stepping half a pace forward. "Wait," he murmured. "I don't think she's pointing at us." I looked from her finger to her face. He was right. Her eyes weren't on us. They were aimed just above our heads. Her arm cut across the air in a straight line, not to us, but over us. That's when I felt it, that slow pull in my gut. The primal feeling that something was behind me. We turned, all at once, and saw 5 people standing in the woods behind us just beyond the path. Half shaded by the trees, not hidden, just waiting. They looked like us. Same height, same hair, same build. But they were wrong in ways you didn't notice at first. The clothes were mirrored buttons on the wrong side, shoelaces tied in configurations that didn't make sense. Nathan's double had a tear in his shirt, but on the opposite side. Ellis' double stood with arms crossed like he always did. When nervous, except the arms were reversed. Left where the right should be. They weren't moving, just standing there. Perfectly spaced, aligned, like mannequins arranged in a storefront. We didn't speak, they didn't either, just stared expressionless. Like they were waiting for something. I stepped back without meaning to. The crunch of leaves underfoot sounded deafening. The air had changed. Not colder, not darker, just wrong. Like the rules we trusted had quietly stopped applying. I glanced back at the woman. She was still there, no longer pointing. Her body hadn't moved an inch, but her head was pushing forward. Just her head. Tilting, straining toward us like it was being reeled in. Her neck stretched too far. Vertebrae visible under skin that looked too tight to bend. Like she was trying to close the distance without taking a step. Like she wanted to reach us with her face alone. She stared at us with that same backward smile mouth bent into a shape sorrow should never take. And those warm, impossibly kind eyes. That contradiction grief twisted into joy settled in her face like it had always belonged there. Her eyes were on us now, not the doubles, us. I could feel the weight of her attention pressing against my chest. Eli made a sound, a sharp, shaky breath in that collapsed into a sob, quick. Uncontrolled. That was all it took. Her body didn't move. Her face didn't change. She just opened her mouth and screamed. It didn't sound human. It didn't sound like anything that should exist. It started low, like the groaning of a ship under pressure. Then it rose into something sharp and metallic, like rusted metal being torn apart underwater. The pitch climbed beyond what a person should be able to produce. We hit the ground instantly, hands to our ears. The sound wasn't just loud, it was inside us, in our bones, our teeth, our skulls. Sam was yelling something, but I couldn't hear it. All I could hear was her. And then it stopped. No fade, no echo, just gone. The silence that followed hit just as hard. My hearing felt muffled, like I'd been underwater. For a few seconds, I could only hear my own breathing, sharp and uneven. When I looked up, she was gone. And the others, the ones who looked like us, they were gone too. Disappeared without a trace, like they'd never been there at all. "I want to go back," Eli said behind us. His voice cracked halfway through. "We shouldn't have come here. We need to leave." None of us answered. We didn't have a plan for any of this. We didn't even know what this was. "I think we are home," Nathan muttered, but it came out wrong. No one agreed. No one even looked at him, because whatever this place was, it only looked like home. And now it knew we were here. We had no boat, no choice, so we moved inland. There wasn't a conversation about it. No group decision. Just a quiet understanding that staying where we were felt worse than pushing deeper into the island. We didn't know what we were looking for. Maybe shelter, maybe sense, but doing nothing seemed like asking for whatever came next. The forest swallowed us quickly. The path that had been there a few minutes ago disappeared behind a wall of brush and bark. The deeper we walked, the stranger everything became. The trees were wrong. Not in obvious ways, nothing. That would scream out to someone who'd just arrived, but we knew trees. We'd grown up climbing them, chopping them, counting the rings of ones that had fallen in storms. And these felt like copies, imitations, like something had tried to recreate them from memory and missed the proportions. Too many knots, branches that twisted back toward the trunk, bark that felt like damp cloth when your hand brushed past it. The ground was soft, but not with moss or leaves. It felt loose, like something had recently shifted underneath it. The air smelled like iron and mildew and something sweet rotting deeper in the woods. Eventually we found a clearing, no wider than a fishing boat. A fallen tree split it down the middle, half uprooted, with thick green moss crawling along its trunk like veins. Jonah sat down on it, hands on his knees, his face pale. "What the hell was that?" he asked. No one had an answer. Sam was pacing again, running a hand through his hair over and over. Eli stood with his back to a tree, eyes scanning the brush as if he expected the woman or something else to step through it at any moment. That's when we heard it a click, soft, mechanical, out of place. Not a branch snapping or the wind shifting, but the distinct sound of a latch lifting, a door, opening somewhere ahead of us in the woods. None of us said to move toward it, but we did. No one suggested turning back. No one asked if we were sure. Maybe because saying it out loud would make it real. Or maybe because that sound, the quiet, Metallic certainty of it felt like a thread pulled taut, and we couldn't stop ourselves from following where it led. As we moved, the forest didn't grow thicker. It grew darker. The light filtering through the trees lost its sharpness. Not just shade-like, the sunlight itself had started to dim before it reached the branches. The air pressed in again, not sharp like on the beach, heavier, like something watching had started to breathe. Eventually, the trees broke into another clearing. The grass here was shorter, yellowed and dry, crunching underfoot. And in the middle of it stood a house. None of us spoke at first. It wasn't broken down or ruined, just old. Weathered boards, sun-faded paint. A small porch sloped slightly to one side, and the roof looked like it had sagged a little in the middle, like something heavy had once sat on it. It looked like the kind of house someone might still live in. We approached slowly, cautious, not curious. Something about it made our steps slow down without us talking about it. I kept scanning the windows, half expecting someone to be standing just behind them, watching. Nathan stopped before the others did. He tilted his head slightly, then pointed to the corner of the porch. "My dad made a post like that," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He walked a few steps closer, squinting at the frame around the door, then to the woodwork under the windows. "It's like our house," he said. "It's not the same, but it's close." He stepped up onto the porch. We followed, hesitant. None of us wanted to be near the place, but no one wanted to let Nathan go alone either. The door was already cracked open, just a few inches. Nathan hesitated anyway. Like something might still reach out and shut it. Nothing did. So he pushed it open the rest of the way. The smell hit first, just stale air and old wood. Like a room that hadn't been opened in too long. The kind of place where dust doesn't float, it just settles into the walls. It looked small from the outside, but the inside felt deeper. Bigger than it should have been. Like the walls had stretched just enough to be wrong. Inside, the light was dim and orange-tinted, like it was filtering through the wrong kind of glass. The hallway was narrow, a coat rack on one side, faint scuff marks on the floor. A chair in the corner that looked familiar, though I couldn't say why. Nathan stepped in first. We followed, slow. Nathan was quiet. He was looking at the photographs on the wall. They were of his family. His parents, his sister, him. But everything was reversed. His dad's watch was on the wrong wrist. His sister's birthmark had switched sides. The smiles looked normal at first, until you stared too long, too symmetrical, too wide. To the right, a doorway led into what looked like a living room mirrored. On our island, Nathan's living room was to the left when you walked in. Here it was flipped. Not just the layout, everything. The furniture was the same kind. Not identical, but close. Same colors, same wear patterns. A clock on the wall ticked just a half beat slower than it should have. The painting above the mantel showed a landscape we all recognized, except the river ran the wrong direction. "I want to go," Eli said behind me. His voice was barely there. None of us answered. We just kept looking. The room held us. Not physically, but in that way, a nightmare does, where the air feels thick and stepping backward might wake something up. We weren't frozen, just slow, careful. Jonah was eyeing the bookshelf. Eli hovered near the fireplace. I stood by the wall, watching the second hand on the clock stutter with each tick. Sam moved toward the painting above the mantel, staring at it like he expected it to blink. No one talked. We were all too deep in its canning corners, studying the little wrong details, trying to figure out what this place was. Then Sam turned, brow furrowed. "Where's Nathan?" Every head snapped around. He wasn't there. He hadn't made a sound. No footsteps, no door creak. He'd vanished like air. We searched the house fast, calling his name, moving from room to room in a rush that didn't feel loud, just clumsy. Like our panic didn't want to make noise but couldn't help it. There weren't many places he could have gone. The hallway led to a small kitchen, a stairwell, and a narrow back room with a locked door. Jonah tried the handle and found it wouldn't budge. No light under the crack. No sound from inside. Sam ran up the stairs 2 at a time. Eli and I closed behind. They creaked under us like normal stairs, nothing theatrical. Nothing dramatic, but every groan from the wood felt too sharp. Like the house was responding. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs. One was empty, bare except for a bed frame and a window nailed shut. The second had a dresser, a mirror with a cracked corner and more photographs. A different version of Nathan's family, this time. The faces were missing from some of the frames, blurred out or too dark to see. But no Nathan. When we reached the bottom, Jonah wasn't there. We found him just outside. A few steps off the porch, arms crossed. I checked around the house too, he said, not looking at us. He's not here. We stood there, all 4 of us, facing the house like it might give something back. The open door gaped in front of us. Cold air leaking out like it didn't belong to this place. Sam looked at me. "Do we go back in?" No one replied. Then footsteps from inside, slow, measured. Getting closer. The porch creaked. Nathan stepped into the doorway. Just stood there, like he'd never left. His face was blank. His shirt was damp. None of us spoke. No one moved. He stepped forward slowly. One hand brushing the frame like it grounded him. He looked rested, calm. His clothes were the same, but the fit seemed off, like they belonged to a version of him just slightly smaller, or built differently. He blinked, squinted at us, then frowned, puzzled. "What?" he said. "Why are you all staring at me?" Eli was the first to speak. "Where the hell did you go?" Nathan tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "I was upstairs. We checked upstairs," I said. "Every room." Nathan looked at each of us, one by one. His face was blank at first. But then something shifted, a flicker of a smile that came and went too fast. Not warm, just performed. "I saw you," he said, "through the railing. You were in the hall. You just walked off. That didn't make sense. We'd torn through every room." He wasn't there. No one had seen him. And there was no way he could have missed the noise we made. I was watching his hands. Nathan always rubbed his thumb against his knuckle. When he was nervous, a little tick. Unconscious. This Nathan's hands were still, relaxed, at his sides. He stepped down from the porch. None of us moved. "Are we going?" he asked. Same voice, same face. But the rhythm was off by a beat. Too calm, too smooth. No one answered. We just stared, waiting for something to twitch wrong. I opened my mouth to say something, but I couldn't make the words form. Not the right ones, anyway. We just started moving brisk, determined. Not quite running, but no longer willing to stop. The sky was dimming fast, the woods deepening in color, and everything around us seemed to press in with a quiet that felt more like watching than stillness. Jonah walked up front. Sam stayed beside me. Eli and Nathan trailed behind us. A little slower, not too far back at first. We were almost to the beach when it hit us. A voice cracked open behind us, rasping, high-pitched, like a throat trying to speak for the first time, and tearing itself apart in the process. There was the shape of a word, but the sound didn't know how to hold it. We froze. None of us looked back. "Run," Jonah said firmly. That was it. So we ran. Branches whipped our arms, roots caught our feet. The path bent the wrong way more than once, and every tree looked like one we'd already passed, but we kept moving. Pushing forward through the tightening forest until the trees finally broke open again. And we saw it, the dock. Warped and crooked, half sunken at the far end. A boat was tied to it. Not the one we'd taken, but something older, narrower, still afloat. We stopped at the edge of the road right next to the boats and turned. I checked to make sure everyone was with us. Eli was not. I watched the clearing, expecting to see him jogging up behind, cursing or out of breath. But the bend in the path stayed empty. We waited. A few more seconds passed. Then we heard it. A scream, ragged and sharp, echoing through the trees like it didn't belong to a voice, but something breaking. Not words, just pain. Jonah moved first. He stepped away from the boats. 1 foot toward the woods, and that's when she appeared. She walked slowly out from the bend of the clearing, circling into view. Cradled in her arms was Eli. He was still screaming. His body writhed, legs kicking, hands clawing at her shoulders. She didn't struggle. She didn't even seem to notice. Her arms were wrapped tightly around him, pulling him against her chest like a mother, calming a child in the middle of a tantrum. Her face was fixed on us, not Eli, not the forest, just us. Her eyes never left ours, like she wanted us to see everything. And we did. That same downward smile carved her mouth into a deep, strained curve. It looked like the expression had been sculpted into her face with wire, pulled tight and wrong. But her eyes told a different story, soft, glassy, full of warmth, like she was watching something beautiful unfold. As she held Eli tighter, her lips quivered slightly, as if the shape was difficult to maintain. Her cheeks twitched, like they couldn't decide whether to frown or laugh. She was trying to be gentle. She wanted us to know that. Eli was screaming, but it wasn't just fear. It was pain, real pain. The kind that stopped sounding human. His arms pushed against her shoulders, clawing, slapping, nothing that made a difference. His legs kicked out violently, his whole body thrashing like an animal in a snare. The heels of his boots barely scraped against the dirt as he was being held up. And still, she looked at us, like we were the ones she was holding. Sam made a sound, half a sob, half a curse, and stepped forward. Jonah grabbed his arm. "We can't," he whispered, his voice cracking. "We can't." But we all took a step anyway. I did. I felt my foot move before I meant it to, like something in me couldn't stand still and watch. Then Eli screamed again, louder this time, high and desperate, raw at the edges. The kind of sound that burns your throat even when you're not the one making it. He kept kicking, kept trying. She didn't flinch. Didn't tighten her grip suddenly. It wasn't violence. It was pressure, steady. Controlled, like she was soothing him into silence, one bone at a time. His screams of agony unraveled into a choking, broken gasp, like even his voice was giving out. Then we heard it. A single crack, subtle, quiet. Like a thick branch snapping underfoot. Eli jerked once in her arms, then stopped moving. His head lolled against her shoulder. His arms dangled at his sides, empty of fight. She didn't stop smiling. She held him there, still watching us. Her eyes locked onto ours like she wanted to see what we'd do next. Her fingers brushed his back in slow, meaningless circles, like she was soothing him to sleep. Jonah stepped backward first, then Sam. I followed. I didn't even think I just moved. The boat scraped against the rock as we pulled it into the water. Nathan hadn't spoken. I looked at him once, just once, and wished I hadn't. He wasn't crying, wasn't breathing hard. He was standing completely still, watching her. And there was something small and soft at the corner of his mouth, an attempted smile. Just enough to be seen, just enough to be wrong. We climbed into the boat, pushed off. No one looked back except me. She was still standing at the edge of the trees, Eli's body limp against her chest, one arm wrapped around him like he was hers, and the other lifted slowly. She waved. We didn't speak on the water. None of us touched the oars at first. The tide pulled us gently, like the sea itself was too tired to fight. The sun had almost slipped beneath the horizon, casting everything in that strange copper light that makes the world feel unreal, like you're seeing it through memory instead of your own eyes. Jonah finally took one oar, Sam the other. I sat in the middle, arms locked around my knees, staring at the ripple patterns trailing behind us. I don't remember when we lost sight of the mirrored island. I just remember the moment the real one came into view. The same island we left, same houses, same hills, same docks. But we didn't come back whole. One of us was dead, and one of us came back wrong. There was a crowd at the shoreline, people from the village, parents, a few older brothers, a grandmother with her arms folded tight. They weren't shouting or pacing or scanning the horizon. They just stood there, like they'd been waiting. The boat scraped against the sand. Hands reached out, my father, Sam's mother, Jonah's uncle. They helped us out without a word. their eyes flicking from face to face, counting. When they didn't find Eli, no one said it out loud. They just knew. His mother began to cry quiet at first, then sharp and shuddering. His father stood behind her, unmoving, staring past us at the horizon like he was still hoping to see his son come into view. One of the older villagers, maybe the priest, maybe just someone who'd done this before, put a hand on her back and gently led her away. She didn't resist. She just let herself be led, walking like someone made of paper. Someone reached for Nathan and pulled him ashore. Calm and deliberate, his mother rushed forward next, throwing her arms around him, clutching him so hard it looked painful. She was crying too, but it was different. Her hands twisted in the back of his shirt, but her face stayed tense like she was, trying to convince herself this was really him. Like she already knew she'd have to let go again. Nathan didn't hug her at first. He stood stiff for a second, then slowly he wrapped his arms around her. When she pulled back to look at him, something shifted in her face. Her hands stayed on his shoulders, but her fingers had gone stiff. Her eyes scanned him like she didn't recognize what she was holding. Nathan smiled. "You're holding me like I died." His voice was almost playful. Almost. He let out a small laugh, quiet, thin, like he wasn't sure if the joke had landed. It was too practiced. It started too fast and ended too late, hanging in the air like it didn't know when to stop. His smile stayed in place, but it didn't settle right. The corners of his mouth began to pull down instead of up. At first it looked like a twitch. Then it kept going, bending further, stretching the muscles in his face into that same strained expression we'd seen on her. A smile that was trying to mimic joy, but failing at the geometry of it. His eyes didn't match it. They looked heavy, glassy, and full of something that didn't belong in a smile. Regret, maybe, or grief. He wasn't afraid, just resigned. Like something inside him understood what came next and didn't try to fight it. His mother let go of his arms. She took a step back, one hand covering her mouth. Behind her, the others had already started to move. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't argue. It was as if the whole village had already made peace with what needed to happen. A few men stepped forward. Jonah's uncle, Sam's father, a neighbor I didn't know by name. Nathan didn't resist. He didn't ask why. He just stood there, shoulders low, his eyes still on his mother. One hand reached for his sleeve, another for his collar. They escorted him to the sea like they'd done it before. No ceremony, no shouting. Just the sound of the tide and the low murmur of footsteps on wet sand. They held him under until the waves stopped moving around them. And then they let him go. I still wonder if the real Nathan died in that house, or if we left him there alive, watching us walk away. Sometimes I think what came back with us wasn't pretending. I think it believed it was him. We begged our parents to send someone back. A boat, a search party, anything. But they just looked through us, like we hadn't spoken, like we hadn't seen what we saw. By the next day, no one even said his name. If you're driving alone at night and the road signs start to distort, you've entered 7 Turns Road. Here's how to survive. If you ever find yourself driving alone at night, maybe after a night drinking with friends, getting off work late, or pushing yourself to reach a distant destination, refusing to stop for rest, and suddenly you're on a road that doesn't appear on your GPS or map, unsure how you even got there, you may have unknowingly been selected by 7 Turns Road. Take a deep breath and follow this guide exactly. I've traveled this road myself many times. There is no turning back, no stopping, only forward. First off, you need to understand something: you were chosen, and I have no idea why. There are no rituals, no secret incantations or hidden routes to memorize. Believe me, I've looked for patterns, I've tried to outsmart it, and I've failed every time. The truth is simple and unsettling: you'll never find 7 Turns Road intentionally. It finds you. At first it's subtle. After making just one turn, your original route blends seamlessly into an endless stretch. That feels both familiar and surreal. It doesn't matter where you were originally heading. You'll know with absolute certainty you're truly on Seven Turns Road when the temperature abruptly plummets, and roadside signs blur, warp, or become nonsensical, dreamlike symbols, distorted letters, upside-down markers. You'll feel it deep in your gut. Don't fixate on the signs, that's how it tricks you into losing control.
You can slow down, even stop briefly, hell.
If panic sets in hard enough, you can step outside for a breath, but never. Ever make it a habit. Those who get comfortable leaving their vehicle don't tend to survive. Read carefully, memorize these steps, and accept the reality you've entered. The only path out is straight ahead. Continue along the road. Wherever you started will feel somewhat familiar, yet increasingly distant. Eventually, this stretch will lead you to a second turn. Your car's radio will switch on automatically attempts to turn it off, or adjust the volume will fail. At first, you'll hear faint white noise that gradually evolves into a woman's soft muttering, indecipherable gibberish that slowly transforms into coherent words, spilling out your darkest secrets, hidden truths you've told no one. I was terrified the first few times, but keep your eyes glued to the road. Your headlights are your only illumination, and you cannot afford to crash. Ignore the woman and drive until the next turn appears. By the third turn, any lingering familiarity of your surroundings will vanish entirely. A dense, oppressive forest will surge upwards, its thick, tangled branches arching overhead to form an almost suffocating canopy, enclosing you completely. On either side of the road, animals will appear, standing impossibly still. A fox, a squirrel, a bear, a bird, all fixed like grotesque statues. Their empty, hollow eyes will lock onto your every movement, heads slowly pivoting in unnatural synchronization as your vehicle passes. Keep driving. Do not acknowledge them. They aren't animals, not anymore. They're mere husks, puppeteered by the road itself as silent watchers. If curiosity compels you to glance again, and trust me, you shouldn't, you'll notice those husks beginning to distort, melting as if made from wax beneath a relentless flame. Fur sloughs away in thick, wet clumps, revealing slick, gleaming surfaces beneath, like dark, chitinous exoskeletons. Eyes liquefy, dribbling slowly from their sockets in streams of viscous decay. The forest around you fills with the sickly sound of dripping, the quiet cracks and pops of joints shifting beneath unraveling skin. Eyes forward. Keep your foot steady on the gas. Pretend you don't see them. Because I assure you they see you. At the fourth turn, your fuel gauge will begin to plummet alarmingly fast. Your headlights will flicker intermittently. Remain calm. The road is enticing you to exit your vehicle. Do not. You're safe if you remain inside. Your speedometer will become erratic, but maintain a steady, comfortable speed. The radio's whispering will grow louder, clearer. The woman's voice will narrate every tiny detail of your existence. Each blink, heartbeat, every breath you take. Even the sweat dripping down your back onto your seat. Pay her no mind. Your focus must remain solely on the road until the next turn. On the fifth turn, a gentle snowfall begins, serene at first, softly coating your car. Normally it might be calming, but the snow quickly intensifies. You'll notice your hearing fading alongside the thickening snowfall. The harsh wind buffeting your vehicle will abruptly stop. Your engine sounds will disappear, followed by your own panicked breathing. All you'll have left is a faint ringing in your ears. Visibility deteriorates until your headlights barely illuminate the blizzard. This snow goes on endlessly, miles upon miles. Do not look to the sides. Though silent, shadowy silhouettes will crawl toward your slowly moving car, attempting to pry their way inside or distract you into veering off the path. If you panic and leave the road, there's no returning. Some shadows will dash suddenly in front of your car. My advice? Pretend they're not there and keep driving. Eventually, you'll encounter a sign, ever-changing, surreal, similar to those at the first turn. Each glance away alters its appearance, but it signals your sixth turn. Right after passing this shifting sign, turn right immediately. Do not miss it. On the sixth turn, your hearing will gradually return. The relentless snowstorm, which seemed eternal, will abruptly cease, melting away rapidly and leaving you alone on the road. The road itself will deteriorate, becoming rough and worn before shifting into gravel. Your car will shake violently, rattling over every pebble and rock. Soon these sounds will grow louder, heavier, disturbingly similar to the snapping and breaking of bones beneath your tires. An open field will suddenly stretch out around you, filled with hundreds, perhaps thousands of tall, dark figures. Initially, you might mistake them for dead, leafless trees, but they will begin to slowly, unsteadily move toward your vehicle. The smallest of these entities tower nearly 10 feet, while the largest stretch close to 20. Their elongated forms resemble charred bone fused with twisted bark. They possess smooth, featureless faces and deep, hollow mouths emitting anguished voices, cries, screams, and pleas of those you've loved, lost, or failed. You'll feel an overwhelming urge to stop and help them. Resist it. Accelerate as quickly as possible. The sound of cracking bones beneath your wheels, combined with their sorrowful cries, will make this turn one of the worst you've encountered. While slow, they will inch closer. Speed past them. As you approach the final turn, a profound sense of relief and accomplishment will flood through you. You'll feel as if you've narrowly escaped digestion by something monstrous and spat back out into safety. This turn will be deceptively beautiful, almost rewarding, adorned with climbing roses and vibrant flowers. Euphoria will briefly fill you until your headlights begin to flicker. Your dashboard lights flash erratically, and every warning signal activates simultaneously. Your vehicle will abruptly die, coasting to a complete stop. With one final flicker of your headlights, utter darkness, deeper than any you've known, will consume you. This is the final test. The road will determine your fate. Remain inside, silent and still. You'll soon hear tapping and knocking against windows, doors, even beneath your car. Countless entities will circle and inspect your vehicle, breathing heavily and scratching at the exterior. Hold tightly to your steering wheel, do not brake, or attempt to restart your car. Your car will begin shifting as they're pushing it towards something immense. You'll hear shuffling footsteps rapidly retreat, fearful. Then, something massive will open wide, though invisible in the darkness. You'll sense its enormity. Your car will shift downward, your stomach plummeting as adrenaline floods your veins. A sudden drop will follow. Your vehicle will slowly descend into something terrible, crushing and grinding around you. You'll hear the car being chewed apart, the metal shredding. Sharp edges will puncture through the floor. Roof and sides, something will scrape your flesh. The vehicle will compress tighter, the roof pressing inches from your face. The sound of destruction deafening. Then, with a final, sickening spin, you'll plummet, spiraling until consciousness fades. You'll awaken gasping on a quiet roadside, the exact place 7 Turns Road first claimed you. Feel the grass, the dirt beneath your fingers. Breathe deeply. You've survived for now. But surviving once doesn't mean freedom forever. I've traveled this road more times than sanity should allow, and each escape comes at a heavier price. Keep this guide safe because the road won't forget you. Even as I finish typing this from the supposed safety of my driveway, I look up, and where my house should be stands an endless road stretching onward, signs distorted and beckoning. 7 Turns Road calls me again. The conductor was never human, we just didn't see it. Walter had been a train engineer for nearly 40 years. He was the kind of man who blended into the machinery, whose presence hummed in the background like low voltage. He arrived before everyone else, left after they were gone, and knew the locomotive like a surgeon knows skin and sinew. Colleagues respected him, though no one got close. He rarely smiled, often stared too long at nothing in particular, and turned down every vacation with the same line: the train runs smoother when I'm near. At first it was just the sound, a slight echo out of sync. A whistle pitched too high, the rails humming in patterns that felt too personal. He thought it was just fatigue, an old man's nerves. But over time, the sounds sharpened. They spoke, not in commands, but in suggestions, gentle, persuasive, intimate. They told him who didn't belong on board and who wasn't real. One night, walking his usual midnight rounds, he paused outside cabin 6. The man inside looked wrong. His face was blurred, expression vacant, like a passenger photoshopped into reality. The voice whispered clearly he shouldn't go any further. Walter didn't feel fear, just a strange sense of purpose, like a long-delayed instinct kicking in. He opened the door and sat across from the man, who slept without stirring. Then, with quiet precision, Walter looped his belt around the man's throat and pulled. The body convulsed. Stilled, nothing else. No resistance, no sound. As if the train itself muffled the moment. Walter stared down at the body and wondered. Not if he had gone too far, but if this was only the beginning. After that, it became routine. He went for sleepers first, as they were easy, quiet, and forgettable. If they stirred, he drugged them with industrial-grade chemicals borrowed from the maintenance kit. One man woke mid-process. Walter broke his skull against the cabin wall, again and again, until the screams stopped. The cleanup took hours. The voices were pleased. They said heat meant life. Brains meant value. They praised his precision. At first he counted 5, 10, 15. Then he stopped counting. He would lock in some passengers in an empty car. He would feed them and watch them. One wept, one prayed. One begged to be killed. Walter complied one by one. He took no pleasure in it. He simply understood the necessity. One night he entered a carriage where a family was seated. A mother, a father, 2 children. He stood in the doorway for a while, gripping a sledgehammer in both hands, watching them. The father slowly rose and stepped in front of the children, shielding them with his body. Walter said, "You're obstructing the route." Then he did what had to be done. The mother screamed once. The children stayed silent. He didn't touch them. He simply closed the door to their compartment, locked it, and walked away, listening to the sound of their fingernails scratching at the glass. The train made no protest. It kept moving forward. Walter knew that someday all the doors would open, that he would find himself bound on the floor, beneath the groaning weight of the wheels, staring into the train's eyes, not through a mirror, not through the windshield, but directly. He wasn't afraid of pain or death. What terrified him was the thought of seeing himself in those eyes. The man he had become, or the one he had always been. There were favorites. People he didn't kill right away. People he studied, touched, not sexually. Rather emotionally, mechanically, as if he was learning how they worked, how they broke. A woman once asked him, "Why me?" He simply said, "Because you're here and they want you." He didn't lie. That was reason enough. He no longer saw it as murder. It was maintenance, a sacred duty. The train demanded balance, and balance required sacrifice. His hands stopped trembling. His thoughts arrived pre-packaged, like timetables from an invisible station. He no longer heard the train's engines. He heard its breathing, and sometimes, its laughter. He began skipping stations, departing without permission. Manifest errors went unnoticed. Missing persons got buried in bureaucracy. Those who tried to question him were met with silence. After all, the real conversations now happened within, with them. Sometimes, late at night, he caught glimpses of his own reflection. Only it wasn't his. Not anymore. Rust around the eyes, oil stains in the shape of teeth. A face like a memory of a face, rebuilt from spare parts and static. When the company tried to forcibly retire him, he didn't protest. He simply vanished into the depot and found an engine long out of service. No name, no route. She started like she missed him. He pulled her onto the tracks and let instinct lead, or prophecy, or whatever now lived beneath the rails. That night all signals failed. Cameras cut out, the train disappeared. Hours later, one message blinked onto the dispatcher's screen: next stop off schedule. He was never seen again, but sometimes on deadlines. In the middle of nowhere, conductors report hearing a whistle in the fog, low. Endless, wrong. And those who fall asleep on late-night platforms, sometimes wake in a carriage with no windows. No exits, just flickering lights and the soft clank of boots in the corridor. They say the conductor walks alone, no face, no voice, only eyes, glowing faintly like lanterns drowned in oil. No one knows where the train comes from. But all agree on one thing: as long as it moves, it only takes one. If it ever stops, it will take us all. This is a warning. If you hear kids calling outside your window after 2 a.m., don't answer. And whatever you do, don't say your name. There's something wrong with my street, my town, and it starts after midnight. You'll hear laughter children playing, sometimes tag, sometimes jump rope, sometimes just calling. But we all know better. You don't open the window. You don't peek through the blinds. You never go outside. I told Emily this, but she didn't believe me. She thought it was just some dumb story I made up to scare her. She doesn't think that anymore, because she's gone. Emily came to live with us in January. Her mommy aunt was diagnosed with leukemia, and my parents said it'd just be for a while, but I knew better. The grown-ups had that quiet, serious tone they only use when things are really bad. Her mother's condition weighed on her greatly. They were all each other had. Emily and I were both in 5th grade, but we weren't exactly close. I mean, she was my cousin, but we weren't friends. She cried a lot. Didn't talk much at school. We didn't like the same things. My mom said she just needed time to adjust and she needed me. The Community Creek School was just a block away, at the dead end of our street. A small charter school, praised for its community atmosphere, small class sizes, and great test scores. Emily got assigned to Miss Blackburn's class, the Miss Blackburn. Everyone knew about her. She'd been teaching 5th grade since the 90s, and somehow still looked like she was in her 30s. All the boys called her a MILF, but I was pretty sure she didn't have kids. The juicy rumor was she was a witch who fed on kids to stay young. Dumb story, right? Our town had lots of these stupid tales. The older kids always used to try and scare us with the same one about the night. Kids, if you hear kids playing outside your house after 2 a.m., don't go. Don't answer. Don't say your name, or you'll join them. We were out in the yard late one night riding bikes. Mom called for us to come inside, jokingly warning us that the night kids would get us. Afterwards, I explained the tale from our neighborhood to her. If you hear the kids, don't go outside, she laughed. What kids? The night kids. The ones that call you out. They only come after 2 a.m. She gave me a look. That's so stupid. Yeah, I said, it is. But I didn't sleep well that night. I woke up to whispers, giggles, a skipping rope sound. Then I heard the front door close. I sat up and went to Emily's room. Her bed was empty. I ran downstairs and flung open the door into the cold. Across the street by the creek, I saw them figures. Maybe 8 or 9 of them. Kids in Halloween costumes, pajamas, even clothes that looked way too old. One had a cone party hat. Another in a 90s windbreaker. Their eyes glinted like mirrors. And in the middle of them, I saw Emily, dazed, pale, walking like she was half asleep. I screamed her name. I ran to her, but she turned and looked at me like she didn't recognize who I was. I yelled her name again. But one of the children grabbed her hand and started pulling. Several then turned their glares towards me, cold, dead eyes warning me. One boy in pajamas started towards me with teeth bared and hands raised. I stumbled backward into the street, opening his mouth. He released a chilling wail. That sounded like 1,000 children in agony screaming all at once. He grabbed my arm and my flesh scorched with an icy chill. I screamed, wrenched my arm free and stumbled onto the ground. He lunged again. I crawled away, scraping my knee and elbow, but managed to scramble to my feet. All I could do was run. When I got to the porch, panting, I turned to look back. I watched helplessly, terrified as they vanished into the woods with Emily. The cops were called, flyers went up, dogs sniffed, drones flew, nothing. No sign, no prints, no Emily. My personal, horrific experience meant nothing to my family. My mother patronized me for the story I told her, calling my recollection unnerving and unrealistic. I was demoralized by her rude, dismissive tone. Weeks passed, my aunt passed. The dark cloud of Emily's disappearance has scarred our family forever, just like the mark his hand left on my arm. My skin is a slightly darker color with shiner. Scaled flesh where he touched me. It leaves me feeling branded and singled out. Alone, yet watched or even hunted. At school, we started working on the 5th grade legacy project, something each class does to leave a piece of themselves behind. This year's class chose a mural hearts painted on the back wall with our names inside. But while we were outside looking at projects from the past, something caught my eye. In the back corner stood a totem-like pole, made of a wood block adorned with plaster casts' faces. I stared at one near the bottom. I knew it, Emily's face. The plaque read 5th grade class legacy project 1997. Guided by Miss Blackburn. That would have been her first year here. And if that's true, how does she still look exactly the same? That afternoon, I went to her classroom after hours. Her blinds were drawn. The room was empty. Quiet, but something felt off. A drawer on her desk was slightly open, so I peeked. Inside, I saw something small and plastic. Emily's hair clip. My hair clip. The sparkly pink one with stars I let her borrow the night she vanished before she went to bed. That night, the handprint-shaped scar on my arm itched. I locked my window. I stuffed towels under the crack in the door. I buried myself in blankets. Every light was on. Still, I heard it. The giggles, the skipping, the whispering. They had come for me. Then Emily's voice, unmistakably terrifying and upsetting. Right outside my window, she said my name. There's a woman on the balcony next to ours. I don't know if she's alive. I don't usually post, but this has been weighing on me for a while now. And I can't stop thinking about it. My wife says I should just forget about it. But I can't shake the feeling that something's off. Not just strange wrong. I don't know what I'm hoping for. Maybe just a second opinion. Maybe someone's seen something like this before. My wife and I moved into a small apartment in Munich in early 2023. It's a quiet place not too far from the center, a little old. But it has a balcony, which we've come to love. We go out there every evening to smoke and unwind, no matter how cold it gets. The view's nothing special, just other buildings and balconies. But one of those balconies has been bothering me since the day we moved in. To the left of our balcony, almost perpendicular, forming an L shape, is another balcony. It belongs to a unit where an old woman lives. We've seen her a few times, which is how we know it's just her. We've never seen anyone else there. But here's the strange part. Her apartment is always dark. Always. I mean pitch black. We've lived here over a year now. We're on the balcony almost every evening. And I have never seen a light on in her apartment. Not once. Not a flicker. Not a hallway light, not a reading lamp, nothing. Day or night. Rain or shine, her windows are like black mirrors. We see her sometimes. Some weeks we don't see her at all. Then she'll appear on her balcony again like nothing happened. She never really looks at us. Sometimes she responds to a hello with a faint, almost off smile. Most of the time she doesn't react at all. But what really gets me is what she does when she's out there. She leans over her railing far, dangerously far, and cranes her neck to look at the balcony next to hers. Not at the sky, not down into the street, the balcony itself. She bends out so far it looks like she's about to tip over. Sometimes she stays like that for minutes, not moving, just staring. I've seen her do it multiple times now. It's always the same, the angle, the stillness, the way her hands grip the rail too tight. My wife swears she's seen her standing close to our balcony door once, late at night, just standing there, not knocking, not moving, not even looking in, just there. We didn't hear her come out. We didn't hear her go back in. She was just there one moment and gone the next. We've asked the landlord about her. He just shrugged and said, "She's been there a long time, quiet, keeps to herself." I've looked at that balcony every night since. Some nights, nothing. Other nights, she's there again, back in her usual position, leaning over just a bit too far, staring into someone else's world like she's trying to remember it. I don't know who she is. I don't know if she's even really living there. But whatever she is, I can't shake the feeling that she's not watching them. She's watching us, and maybe she always has been. Let me know what you think. Am I losing it, or does this sound as weird to you as it feels to me? Since I learned what happens after we die, I wish I had never been born at all. I was raised in a devout Catholic household. I've spent my entire life dedicated to the faith. As a kid, I was an altar boy, and as an adult, I spent most of my free time volunteering to plan church events, fish fries, charity work, spring fairs, bake sales, all that stuff. I fell short of becoming a priest despite my attempts. I tried seminary, but I was never that great at school. And when they politely pointed me into other ways I could serve God in the church, I read between the lines. I don't want you to get the wrong idea about me. I'm not a saint by any stretch of the word. I was and am a coward. It's as simple as that. It was not a love for God or a duty to my fellow man that kept me involved in the church. It was fear and fear alone. For as long as I can remember, I have been terrified of death, and even more so of the concept of hell. Whoever thought that telling 5-year-olds in Sunday school that if you're mean to your mom, God will sentence you to an eternity in lake of fire is one sick fuck. I would wake up screaming in the night from nightmares of being banished from God's kingdom. I would cry myself to sleep most nights, afraid that I would never wake up again. My parents, bless their hearts, tried everything to help me. They took me to church counseling, talked with priests, and eventually got me on medication. It took a while for us to find the right dosage, but by the time I was 20, they calmed the raging storm of daily panic to a slight drizzling sense of dread. As an older adult, the rational part of my brain took over more, and I started to pull away from the church. Inconsistencies in the Bible, the geographical nature of God, the scholarly studies on interpolation, and more all made me question my faith. Then I learned the idea of hell that were taught in church, and pop culture isn't even described in the New Testament. And hell is not present in the Old Testament at all. I still went to church, and I definitely believed in something. But my convictions grew weaker and weaker. In some ways, I was comforted by loosening the grip on my faith. In other ways, it was terrifying. My fear of hell was being slowly chiseled away at, but it was replaced with a much greater nagging fear, the fear of the unknown. I used to believe that not knowing was worse than any hell. And at least if you know there's a hell, you could try to avoid it. But if hell was the worst thing the human mind could think of, imagine how much worse the unthinkable could be. Unfortunately, it was only a few years that I lived with this new fear before I learned how wrong I was. Several years ago, scientists successfully brought someone back to life. Well, kind of. They brought a person's consciousness back to communicate with. I'm not the right person to get into the minutiae, but my basic understanding is this: they found a soul, or more accurately, they found a particle in the brain that is responsible for consciousness. Using that, they were able to take someone who was dead for 2 weeks and successfully hook up this soul particle into a series of machines and communicate with them. Here, it'll probably be better if I just show you an excerpt from the transcripts that was published alongside the paper that changed our world. Researcher? All right, the device is active. All channels are clear, right? Good. All right. Hello, are you able to hear us? Can you give us a sign that you can understand what I'm saying? Patient what? What's happening? I can hear again. Oh, my God, I heard something. Can you hear me? Where am I? What's going on? Researcher, great. You can hear us. We're just going to ask a few questions. First, do you remember who you are? Patient, can you hear my thoughts? Oh, thank God, praise the Lord. Please just help me. I can't do this anymore. I can't, researcher. We are trying to help, sir. Please. Let us know if you can remember who you are. Patient, yeah. Yes, of course. I mean, yes. My name is redacted. I was in a car accident. That's the last thing I really remember before all this. Have I been in a coma, or am I a vegetable or something? What have you been doing to me? I don't want to be a part of whatever this is anymore. I don't want no. No, I don't want this. Researcher, we need you to relax. We are going to help you. We will answer your questions soon. We just have some quick questions to get to first. What can you tell us, Abi? Patient, oh God, you're not going to help, are you? Please, I need you to... God, please. I just can't do this. You have to help me. It's been so dark and quiet for so long. I was alone with nothing by my thoughts. Researcher, sir, we need you to calm down right now. We're trying to... Patient, I kept trying to communicate. I tried screaming or moving or doing something to tell someone. Anyone to pull the plug. I could tell they were experimenting on me or something at first. But I just wanted them to let me go. I remember feeling needles and them cutting into my flesh everywhere. And then even that was gone. I can't feel my limbs. I can't move. I can't see. I just want it to stop. The blackness and the silence and the thoughts. I need it all to stop. Please, I know you're trying to help, but I don't want to be alive anymore. I can't live anymore. Please kill me. Please. Just kill me, please, I am begging you, our Father. Who art in heaven? The study tried to explain what occurred in scientific, academic and clinical terms the best they could. But it wasn't until later revelations that we as a society truly grasped the full meaning of all this. The scientific world was hesitant at first, but once it was peer-reviewed and repeated, there was no slowing this down. This breakthrough was described as the greatest discovery since Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. Nearly every major scientific organization shifted their resources to study the soul particle. The funding seemed unending for this research at the time, and people begged to know more. Many religious organizations rushed to build labs to be the one to prove their God was the true one. They brought back countless saints, Picus, Pujaris, pagans, Satanists, and even fringe cult leaders. But one by one, they all found the same result. The truth is, there is no heaven. There's no afterlife. There isn't even really death as we know it. Once you hit a certain point in development, a light turns on. That light can never go out. They were able to talk to that first patient for a while and learn more. He died pretty much instantaneously in that car crash. His body was sold and practiced on in a medical school. He felt everything they did to him before his nerves decayed. He could tell at first his eyes were closed, but some glimmers of light would occasionally pierce through the eyelid. So he knew they still worked. Eventually his eyes completely failed, and then his ears. And finally the last trickle of pain from his decaying body was replaced with nothingness. Not blackness, not silence, not numbness. Nothing. He assumed he was alive and paralyzed or something similar, and he prayed that any minute he would die. It wasn't until the scientists explained that he had been dead for 2 weeks that his bleak reality hit him. We have been able to bring back countless numbers of people after death at this point. Even those who have been dead and buried for thousands of years can be salvaged to an extent. Although after around 100 years or so, they become impossible to communicate with. Being alone with your thoughts for that long just causes you to forget how to think in any meaningful language. I guess as far as we can tell, there's no way out of this. Everything you are, everything you have felt, everything you know and ever will know is all just contained in a single microscopic particle that controls your nervous system and body. You are not your body or your brain. You are a single atom in the cockpit of a biological machine. We still don't know how or why it works. But it doesn't appear in the brain until around age 3 or 4, and once it's there, there's nothing anyone can do. It's not present in any animals. It's just humans in this hell as far as we can tell. Scientists have checked every cause of death imaginable, and it's still present. We've tried cremation, dissolving in acids, nuclear explosions, you name it. The soul particle has survived it. If it can be destroyed, we haven't found a way to do so. Some theorize that when the sun envelopes the earth in 5 billion years, we'll finally be released from our prisons. But others believe that's just wishful thinking. Whatever the finer details may be, it's been undeniably scientifically proven the conscious soul outlives the body and is forced to be alone with itself with no input for the rest of eternity. At least in hell you could feel the heat. Funding has dried up, and any further research into the topic has ceased entirely. Not much point of learning anything anymore. Society moves on slowly and without aim. Some of us still work, trying to find meaning in this short time we have through menial labor. But most of us just sit at home and wait for the end. Every church, temple, and mosque lies vacant now besides a few diehards who still believe they can pray their way out of this. I wish I had an ounce of their optimism, but if there was a religion that offered a heavenly alternative to our doomed reality, it died off a long time ago. No matter how devout or moral or evil anyone is, they will meet the same undignified end. The Bible got one thing right, at least. Meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Ecclesiastes 12. I thought the coming apocalypse would look like the movies, but really people are too nihilistic to do anything anymore. I'm sure a few weirdos lived out some sick fantasy. But when you're faced with an eternity of nothingness, earthly pleasures seem so small in comparison. Billionaires and those with political power secured themselves machines that could keep them in a somewhat comfortable state after death indefinitely. But these machines take immense power and oversight to keep running 247. It's hard to convince someone to spend what little time they have left making sure some dead rich asshole is comfortable. So when their money runs out, or people just get bored, the machines are abandoned, and they're thrust into nothingness just like the rest of us. Recently, there's been an entire ban on having kids. Everyone had to be castrated. It sounded unthinkable at the time, and people fought back, and blood was shed, but it's pretty well accepted now. It was the most humane thing we could have done, knowing what we know. No one deserves to be brought into a world you can't escape from. When the youngest generation alive today dies off, there will be no humans left on Earth. The irony is that I spent most of my life being staunchly pro-life. I used to think a child's death was the worst thing that could happen. It turns out they were the lucky ones. They were the ones who got out in time. I try to appreciate what time I have left. But how could I when I know what terrible fate will befall each and every one of us? I tripled my medication dosage, but nothing keeps the waves of panic at bay fully. And there's no way to administer medication once the body is gone anyway. I try to take solace in the fact that I'm not alone in this. Every single one of us has to go through it, right? It's humanity's cross to bear, so to speak. But I know in my heart that there is no solace in suffering together. My mom used to tell me a story when I was young. She said that the greatest decision she ever made was when she left that abortion clinic and had a change of heart at the last second. She used to say I was the only thing she didn't regret in life. I'm glad she died before this study came out. I'm not sure she could have lived with herself, but for what it's worth, I forgive her still. I wonder if there's a parallel universe out there where she went through with it. I wish I wasn't born in that universe instead. If you enjoyed the story, consider subscribing, but don't blame me if you can't sleep tonight. Until next time, keep the lights on and the doors locked. Goodbye.